Hello and welcome again to the 10th Bendigo Invention and Innovation Festival. My name's Jonathan Ridnell. Today's conversation, Bendigo's new gold rush, will begin in a few moments, but first, I'd like to acknowledge that we're joining you from Dja Dja Wurrung land. I'd like to pay respects to the traditional owners who are the first scientists, technologists and innovators who for thousands of years have been stewards of their culture and land. I'd like to particularly pay respects to elders past, present and emerging. And I'd also like to acknowledge this session's partner is Mandalay Resources and the contributors are Ostmine, the Minerals Council of Australia Victorian Division and Fosterville Gold Mine. To get proceedings underway, please welcome another big supporter of innovation, invention and optimism in regional Victoria, the Honourable Jacqueline Symes, Minister for Regional Development, Agriculture and Resources.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you so much for joining. Of course, I would like to begin by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land of which we are gathered on and pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging, and of course any elders from other communities who may be participating today. Further, I would like to acknowledge Jonathan Ridnell, who is facilitating our panel this afternoon, Ryan Osterberry, General Manager of Mandalay Resources Costerfield Operations, Christine Gibbs-Stewart, CEO of Ostmine, James Sorahan, Executive Director of the Minerals Council of Australia Victorian Division, and Sue Mills, the winner of Exceptional Women in Victorian Resources 2020 from Fosterville Gold Mine. Thank you so much for inviting me here today to launch the Bendigo New Gold Rush panel at the Bendigo Invention and Innovation Festival. Regional Victorians are some of the most innovative and resilient people around, and events like this show how we can come together to think big, deliver solutions and create regional jobs. Regional Vic shows its strengths with the number of digital events it's hosting, including the 10th annual Bendigo Invention and Innovation Festival, which this year has a focus of optimism through innovation. This, of course, sums up how me and many people feel about regional areas and the many businesses that are adapting to carry on through some of the most tough times we're enduring. I am very optimistic about Bendigo's future and the ability of its people to adapt and invest in new and better ways of doing things. Inevitably, this will result in economic opportunities and, most importantly, local jobs. Many of these opportunities will arise through the region's gold mining sector. Victoria's gold sector is going from strength to strength on the back of increased gold production and record interest in minerals exploration in the Bendigo region. Gold is very much part of Bendigo's rich history and past. Now there's a new gold rush, but in a very different environment to the first one. The Geological Survey of Victoria has identified the state has gold resources of around 80 million ounces that are yet to be discovered, much of which is located to the east and northeast of Bendigo. The Greater Bendigo region, through the Fosterville mine, has already achieved an international profile. The Mandalay Resources Gold and Antimony mine at Costerfield is showing great potential as well. We have 1,000 or so workers at these two mines, and most are living locally within the city of Bendigo LGA. The jobs and investment potential of this second gold boom is emerging as perhaps one of the region's most significant economic development opportunities. Today's explorer is, of course, often just retracing the steps of our gold pioneers, but with the advantages of modern equipment and mining techniques. Innovation and better technology are the key to unearthing the gold that is yet to be found. Of course, it's vital that with any exploration and mining activity, the community is kept well informed and provided with plenty of opportunities to have their say. The Earth Resources Regulator's new advertising guidelines for exploration licences is doing just that. It's ensuring communities have every opportunity to contribute to local minerals developments and the decisions that underpin them. There's a lot more to mining than just getting things out of the ground. The services and industries that support it are substantial. There are a myriad of innovative businesses in the Bendigo region that provide services supporting mineral exploration and development. This sector supports thousands of jobs in Victoria, including mineral exploration, mining products, engineering, consulting, construction, information technology, and professional services. But what's really important about the future potential of this sector is its ability to think outside the square. For example, local company Safescape has developed an electric light vehicle specifically for the difficulties of deep underground mines. These tough trucks have the latest battery technology designed to deliver grunt as well as operational savings. Safescape have also developed a new escapeway for underground mines called the Ladder Tube, a fully enclosed tube of strong, lightweight, bright yellow plastic, which is easy to install and use. The ability of regional Victorian companies to innovate and adapt is just so impressive, and the Victorian Government is very proud to be backing them through our METS Regional Innovation Accelerator, which I launched in Bendigo just last September. The program is designed to help regionally based mining support businesses to engage with local mining companies, fast-track product innovation and promote their services. The Regional Innovation Accelerator program, which is part of our Minerals Resources strategy, is designed to help the sector grow through innovation. It is a practical example of how we're supporting regionally based companies to promote investment, growth, and potentially regional jobs. We must harness Bendigo's second gold rush to ensure that the benefits roll across the entire state. There will be opportunities for education, training and skills development in a whole range of occupations that will be needed. Bendigo is, of course, a fast-growing region with talent, history and an aptitude for new high-tech gold mining. The Victorian Government is committed to new industries in regional Victoria, creating new jobs, generating additional investment that will lead to our much-needed economic growth for our regions. The technology-driven innovation on show at this year's festival will have long-lasting social, community and economic impacts. If we continue to remain open to new ways of doing things, our second gold rush will secure Bendigo's global reputation, bringing with it our jobs of the future.
Thank you for those kind words, Minister Symes. During the first sessions of the Bendigo Invention and Innovation Festival, we've learnt more about the link between realistic optimism and innovation and the importance of nurturing creativity to encourage invention and innovation across our communities. And extractive industries, mining, has been a theme that's popped up in many of our sessions, including opportunities for Australian regional manufacturing, which we held a couple of hours ago. And remember, we're not just a virtual festival, we're an interactive festival, so you can contribute anytime through the 2020 BIIF screen you're watching. Just hit the Ask a Question or Type a Question tab and send us your questions. Gold made Bendigo and much of the region. While the 2020 BIIF is about looking forward with our theme, optimism through innovation and invention, let's just get a few Bendigo goldfields facts. Historically, the Bendigo goldfield has been Australia's richest region. For a short time in the 1880s, Bendigo was the richest city in the world, and in 1879, the stock exchange listed over 1,300 companies with more than 18 million shares registered. Today, with the presence of a number of gold mines operating in the region, including Fosterville Gold and Mandalay Resources at Costerfield, and potential for more gold mines across the state, according to Minerals Development Victoria, who say, like the Minister said, there are vast gold deposits to the north and east of Bendigo, it feels like we're experiencing a new gold rush. Or are we? Our panel today will have the answer for us. I'd like you to meet Christine Gibbs-Stewart, the Chief Executive Officer from Ostmine, James Sorahan, who is the Executive Director at Minerals Council of Australia Victorian Division, Ryan Osterberry, who's the General Manager at Mandalay Resources, and Sue Mills, Processing Manager at Fosterville Gold Mine. Welcome to you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Excellent. I'm going to ask basically the same question of you all. Christine, your organisation represents people who support mining. Do you see Bendigo as having a golden future?
Thank you for that question. And can I just start out by saying thank you for inviting me to join this panel today. I think the theme optimism through innovation is really needed and a spot-on theme for right now. And the sector we represent, the mining equipment technology and services sector, is one of the most innovative sectors in Australia. So I'm really pleased to be here. So getting back to your question, I mean, how could you not be optimistic? How could it not be a new gold rush with what the minister said and how you and what you just introduced with some facts around what's happening in Bendigo? I think the organizers of this festival couldn't have timed it better with the current price of gold and what that means in terms of investment. And that means there's an opportunity to invest both for the operating miners, but on the exploration side of things, and bring new technologies to the region, attract new investment to the region. Look at things like using drones, handheld sampling devices, in situ technologies that will make things more efficient, will make things safer. And layer that with what's happening digitally. It's a very exciting time as we're going to be able to see undercover. We're going to be able to discover new mineral deposits, and we're going to be able to save a lot of time and money in the process. On top of that, on top of what's happening with the commodity, Bendigo is already home to a lot of great world-leading METS companies. The minister mentioned Safe Escape, who is an exporter of both safety equipment, and now they're doing electric vehicles. There are other companies such as Hoffman Engineering, Keach, Australian Turntable, and Paul Chapman is a major driver behind this festival, and they're doing amazing things both here in Australia and internationally. And then if you look a bit down the road and look at that whole Golden Triangle in Central Victoria, you have companies like Gecko Systems who are really leading the way with new technologies in mineral processing. So it's quite an exciting time. There's a lot going on, and there's a lot of excitement happening in Bendigo. And so I think this festival really celebrates that.
Fantastic. What I love about this panel is that we have got some people representing major organisations, but we've also got a mine manager and a resources or extraction manager as well. So we should be able to get the whole story of where innovation and invention is at the moment. So James from the Mineral Council, maybe I can ask you also, as I'll call you someone on the outside looking in, do you feel optimism coming to you from Bendigo?
Oh, absolutely. There's huge potential in Bendigo going forward. We often think in Victoria as mining being part of our past, but it's also a huge part of our future. There's about as much gold sitting under Victoria as has ever been extracted since the gold rush, and a lot of that is in and around the Bendigo region. So there's huge potential if we get it right, and the companies in Bendigo are doing some extraordinary things, which they'll talk about. And as Christine said, when you look at all the small and medium-sized businesses sitting around it in the MET sector, that just grows the opportunity for Bendigo.
Fantastic. And Sue, I guess that, I've seen Fosterville when you've had a smelting, and it looks so exciting. From where you sit inside the mine complex itself, do you feel optimistic for the future of gold?
Yeah, absolutely. So Central Victoria is certainly emerging as a thriving region for this, and it's safe to say that Fosterville is, renewed a lot of interest in the local region as well, just basically being on the global scale that we are at the moment. So I was just reflecting earlier about where we've been and how we've gone here. I mean, the history since mining in this area since 1894 is pretty substantial. And I always imagine to myself, if I could picture the faces of the miners from 1894, and then if they could actually see us with our gold production in our new state-of-the-art refineries, their faces would just light up. I think there'd be an immense disbelief as to, where we've come through the history of the Bendigo and Central Goldfields as well. I really, I think just to emphasise that point as well, in the financial year ending 2020, not only did Australian gold production hit a new record, there was something like 328 tonnes of gold that was from the Australian gold production, but Fosterville is actually the third largest Australian gold producer in the financial year of 2020, which is a pretty significant milestone to have actually reached, and to be able to say that we're a Victorian-based and Central Goldfields-based company is, I think, a spectacular story. Where do I think the real golden future actually lies? I would say with the connect between our successes as a collaborative industry around the region, and also with our community as well. So there's a lot of inputs that we can get. There's some radical ideas that turn into some really good, strong solutions for problems that we have in the mining industry that are right on our own doorstep here. And I think that connect between the community and the industry is really where our golden future lies.
Yeah, it's interesting, Sue. In our manufacturing conversation this morning, there was a lot of that linking what you would think were completely different industries together with similar kinds of innovation and invention. So space programs and robotics, mining and robotics. Just because you say that I'm developing my robots for a mine, that's not all you do. You're actually creating that intellectual property that can travel across industries.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. And Ryan, for yourself as well, you spent the time below ground as well. What do you think from a Mandalay Resources point of view? Do you feel like there's a golden future for resources in Central Victoria?
Definitely. Very optimistic at the moment, especially with the gold price. I think that was a common theme that everyone just touched on then. Obviously, during the pandemic, the unfortunate time, a lot of people are going to gold as a safe haven. A lot of currencies are diluting, but gold obviously is just going from strength to strength. No doubt in the region, a lot of the optimism is based on the back of Fosterville's success. We're a much smaller company. Our production's doubled this year in gold, so we're also quietly ticking along well. But with the ground release that the government had earlier this year, that the minister briefed before, there's a lot of big companies wanting to get in on the action in the area. So I know Newmont's got a tenement just north of Bendigo, so a big company with a big market cap. There's plenty of interest.
Seems like Ryan is having a few moments trying to connect with us from Fosterville. So what I might do is move on to call those supporting industries, Christine. And you mentioned how significant METS is, but can you take us through that really basic, what METS is and how diverse that industry is?
Absolutely. So METS, again, is the mining, equipment, technology, and services sector, so suppliers to miners. But not just your ordinary supplier, companies that have a unique capability and a deep domain knowledge of mining and minerals. And in Victoria, we've done some research, and there's probably about 1,500 companies that are in the resources supply chain, so that includes oil and gas. You break that down to core METS companies, there's probably about 400 or 500 of those. And looking at those companies, what we see with those companies is they really have a strength in manufacturing. So we know that 45% of those companies manufacture. They are also prolific exporters. About 58% of those companies export, which is phenomenal. And then you have a whole bunch of really smaller, I'm not going to say small, but I'm going to say smaller, highly innovative, dynamic companies that make up the sector. And that's anything from, again, I mentioned the manufacturers, advanced manufacturing, to consulting firms, to large multinationals. The largest METS firm, or the largest Australian METS company, is Orico, which is headquartered in Melbourne, of course, and operates throughout the state and throughout the country. And you have other well-known METS companies in Victoria, such as IBM is a METS company. EY is a METS company. You have CSIRO, who we would include as a METS company. And then you have the other companies I mentioned located in Bendigo. And there's, because Bendigo, it's not too far from Melbourne, and Victoria is a rather, a smaller state. You have a lot of crossover between what's happening in metro and the regional areas, and that's only going to set to continue. Sue mentioned collaboration, and one thing that Victorian METS are is they're very collaborative, and they're not only working with each other, they're working with universities, and they're also working with the mining companies.
Christine, you mentioned 58% of our METS companies are exporting. Does that mean that Australian technology and Australian mining know-how is very much in demand around the world?
Absolutely. The METS sector is one of the most internationalized sectors in Australia. You always hear about the commodity exports, but you don't hear about all the smart products and services that we're exporting from Australia. In fact, Australia supplies and has developed 60% of the world's mining software. And so that's quite a phenomenal statistic when you think about how large the mining industry is worldwide. And, made in Australia is a hallmark of success internationally. It opens doors and it gets you in to see those customers. And a lot of countries are looking at what we're doing in Australia with mining and the met sector, and they're trying to emulate it.
Fantastic. James, if I can just ask you to also just expand where we've talked about the potential for the Bendigo goldfields. As a state, how golden or any other mineral is the future for the mining industry in Victoria?
Yeah, the biggest opportunities too are in jobs, which I should mention, and particularly for young people in regional areas to be able to stay in region and have good, high-paying, really satisfying jobs across a whole range of really innovative and high-tech applications, like in mets and in mines, but also right through to great trades roles and elsewhere. So they're really the big opportunities for Victoria, and on financial markets, so in Toronto and Vancouver and London, they're all talking about Bendigo and Central Victoria. That's where all the excitement is. So the interest from overseas globally is quite extraordinary, and we've seen just in the last 3 months the biggest spend in exploration on record in Victoria. Almost $40 million was plowed into the ground in exploration. A lot of that driven by, as Ryan said, the gold price, and a lot of that money is coming from Canada and elsewhere. So really exciting. It just shows what can happen. This is in some ways the early days around exploration. Fosterville's doing extremely well and employing around 800 people, and Mandalay a couple of hundred. But if another mine, and we'd certainly like to see another gold mine get developed in Victoria, and who knows exactly where it will be, it could be near Bendigo, then you'd see hundreds more jobs. Just in the last 2 years, the Stawell gold mine has reopened. We've got a mine operating under Ballarat, and of course the two near Bendigo, as we've just mentioned, and there are a couple of smaller operations in the northeast. But I think with another gold mine, with this exploration activity taking place, huge potential for jobs in regional Victoria.
And James, the Minerals Council has created a resource and information pamphlet about mining in Victoria, and probably the one thing that I took home from that is there's many a challenge between identifying a resource and actually getting a paying mine to return to investors. There's a few bodies on the road to it, aren't there?
Yes, yeah, it can take at least a decade between finding something and developing a mine. And much of that is because mining is very heavily regulated, which is absolutely appropriate. And we do want to, as Sue touched on before, bring the community with us, have community support. If we don't have community support, we don't have a mine, and we want to do things properly and to the highest standards. So in Victoria, a gold mine is operating at globally the highest environmental, community, and health and safety standards, and we're really, really proud of being able to do that. It does take time, but people can have assurance that it's done properly here.
Yep. So I'm really keen to talk to our mining employees in a moment about the innovation and invention that they're seeing even in their careers. But how important is innovation and invention to, as you say, go and identify a resource and then know that you have got the tools and the know-how to make a payable enterprise?
Yeah, very important, and a lot of that innovation that is invented in Bendigo and elsewhere sits around all of the health and safety, the processing technologies, and much of the mining in Victoria, gold mining is underground, which has its own technical and other challenges. So that innovation is critical to making sure you've got a resource. It's all very well and good to find a resource there, but unless there's an economically viable way of going about it, and often that means inventing new ways of doing things and technologies in a mine in Victoria, which can then, that idea can be exported elsewhere around the world if they have similar mines or similar deposits. So that's where you see a huge amount of the innovation. So you do need to have the mines here in Victoria for some of that innovation and those METS companies to get their start. and then they can take on the world. So yeah, mining is extremely innovative. I think some people will probably, particularly in the cities, don't always see it that way. They sort of picture people going in with a pick and shovel, or think of gold panning at Sovereign Hill, but it's absolutely nothing like that. It's one of the most high-tech industries out there, and the new inventions, everything from software to machinery, the engineering challenges, quite extraordinary. And it's great knowledge that Australia develops here from our mining sector. We then export around the world.
Yep, so let's expand on that a little bit. I think it was Sue who touched on how confused a miner from the 1890s would probably be with a 21st century operation. Ryan, can you explain some of the kinds of inventions and innovations that you've seen in your mining career?
Yeah, so on the mining...
Oh, rats. Okay, so Ryan, do you want to have another crack at that?
Yeah. So yeah, obviously, mining started off a very manual, a very sort of manual process. It's gone into a mechanical process, and now it's gone into the digital era. So I'd say that on our side of things at Fosterville, we're a very narrow vein. So we've worked with METS companies to produce specific equipment. Very small equipment. Sometimes we're mining veins that are only a couple of centimetres wide. So we're trying to narrow down minimise the dilution, so we can get the most value out of the product we mine. But autonomous equipment's a big new as a new push where it's taking people away from those risks. So taking people out of underground, operating trucks, operating boggers which muck the material up, taking them to operate from the surface. So fibre optics plays a big part in that. We've also got obviously the battery operated equipment that was mentioned. Blasting technologies has gone to electronics, which is more precise, more safe. Remote tag boards, so you know where people are working in different parts of the mine. A lot of it's driven by safety, so taking away the manual labour and then taking away people from the risk on that side of thing, exposing them to taking away from the exposure to risks of mining, and also other things such as battery operated equipment. That's there taking away the diesel particulate matters. That's a big talking point in the mining industry as well. So reducing that. iPads, drones, all this technology is all continually improving. Everyone's trying to improve their efficiencies to reduce their cut-off grades so they can extend their mine lives. They can mine more material, have a longer operation. So it's if you're not improving or not looking to improve, then you're very stagnant and people will go straight past you.
So Ryan, for example, when you were developing that narrow vein digging equipment, can you tell me about the collaborative approach that you took to get that off the ground, or get that under the ground, I suppose?
Yeah, actually, a lot of it was a South American supplier. That one specifically, their drills, large sort of electric drills. Although the supply from South America, when we got them here, we had to customise it. So we worked with some local suppliers to come up with parts different or make adjustments to the equipment so it could be usable for how we customise it for how we actually need it. So although we might still, although be buying the equipment from overseas, we use local METs to help us to customise it to how we need it to work.
Okay, thank you. And Sue, you work above ground as a processing manager, and again, I'll smile at the 1890s analogy. I mean, how do miners set their clocks if you can't hear the stamping engine stopping and starting at night time? So, talk to me about the innovations in that side of the mining industry.
So I think what is unique about Fosterville is we actually have Australia's only operational bacterial oxidation plant. So we actually use bacteria to extract our gold, which is in preference over other methods such as roasting. And part of that has been chosen because of our location. So we're slap bang in the middle of agricultural country. And obviously we've got to be really mindful about the impact that we have also on the environment, but also the people that are in our neighbourhood as well. So the bacterial oxidation circuit really opened up us to the world internationally. So apart from being Australia's only oxidation plant, obviously we have to call on experiences from people internationally to be able to help us with any sort of like problem solving or anything like that we need to do, and connect us with international peers. So that's probably the biggest innovation. So that came into play in 2005. And it was it was our transition into a sulfide refractory material that actually saw us move into this technology. And it is now the hub of what we do. And since then, of course, over time, the mineralogy has also changed. And with that, we've had to look at other ways of actually being able to effectively process the material that is coming to the surface. And with that was obviously the biggest gold find in 100 years in Victoria was the Swan fault. And that has given us the gravity gold material that we actually see. And from that, we developed obviously a gravity recovery and a tabling system to be able to get that material, as well as the bacterial oxidation circuit. All of these sorts of technologies, the gravity, that's technology that is well known and has been in play throughout the years. With bacterial oxidation, that actually has been around since the 1970s, but probably not so much in obviously the commercial way that we are operating that at the moment. That would be the most significant change for mining in our region. It also is a very interesting one as well. I mean, probably not many people in Bendigo would actually even appreciate that they have such a unique gold mine right on their doorstep as well.
It sounds interesting to me, Sue, that you could almost say that the innovation is you're working with nature rather than against nature with bacteria and gravity.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
For sure. Okay, well, I think we've talked a lot about the optimistic side of the innovation and invention. Do you mind if I explore some of the barriers? And James, I might come to you with this one first, because it's something I can't answer at all. This is from Margaret O'Rourke, the Mayor of the City of Greater Bendigo, so we all have to behave for this one. Has there been any update with where the exploration licence announcements are? Never been a more important time for these opportunities to be opened up and explored. So do you know where the doors are opening, James?
Yeah, the department is getting through a number of applications. There's been huge interest in Victoria, so they've been somewhat overwhelmed with the number of people making applications for exploration licences. And my understanding is, yes, a number of them have been granted in recent times, but there's still some way to go. And Ryan mentioned the North Central ground release before. That's been delayed till early next year. The successful tender is on that, so I think we're expecting to hear that early next year. But with that announcement and the number of new exploration licences being granted, we would hope to see more explorers on the ground soon, because more explorers on the ground means quicker we can find new discoveries and have people working in the exploration sector.
Okay, thank you very much for that. I mentioned that it's not just the Bendigo Invention and Innovation Festival, it's the Bendigo International Invention and Innovation Festival. Rod is writing in from San Diego in California, and he asks, and again, this is for the panel, I'm not sure which side can answer this, do you see advances in machine autonomy continuing, everything from collision detection, 3D modelling, and all the other things being developed in Australia, or is that technology that's being more imported? I guess you touched on that a bit, Ryan, that you look to South America for your narrowband drilling, but where's the balance between looking overseas for solutions and developing them in-house?
We've got, at Fosterville, we've got a company we've used, which is an Australian company, to assist us with setting up a tele remoting. So that's an Australian company. So there's numerous companies out there that do the similar things. They just do them a little bit different. We're extremely narrow vein, and it uses detection so it doesn't hit the walls. And yeah, that's definitely developing that autonomous and remotely operated equipment. as I mentioned, some places now, although it's an underground mine, the people sit up in front of a TV on a screen using a joystick operating equipment, and they can actually be operating 4 pieces of equipment at one time, one person, because it's all predictive. It knows the path it goes down, just keeps going down the same path, and it'll just take a couple of button presses and away it goes. So one person can operate numerous bits of equipment. I suppose that's the sort of efficiencies that people are looking for.
Are you telling me, Ryan, that my background playing computer games and console games could actually pay dividends as a real job?
Yeah. Kids these days that play Minecraft could end up being very good geologists on resource block models or different things. So, yeah.
Fantastic. Christine, perhaps you can expand on that, given how international the METS industry is. Is it as simple as buying it in from overseas or exporting it from Australia, or is it far more collaborative?
Well, for the basic premise of the question, first of all, it's being developed here. There are so many exciting developments happening with our MET sector in collaboration with the mining companies that we are taking it to the world. Yes, there are some international collaborations, and the other things that is happening is major multinationals are coming here to set up their digital mining centers, to set up their automated drilling centers. So, we are attracting companies, major companies from overseas to come here and develop their technologies here. There is certainly a lot of scope to partner both in terms of knowledge exchange, to look for partners overseas, to export the knowledge, products, or services. But what we are doing here and the innovation ecosystem, which has been created in Australia, has really led to the deployment of technologies that aren't being used elsewhere. You can look, I guess, at the autonomous vehicles we have in the Pilbara. You can look, Ryan talked about the underground automation that's happening. And then things like your digital twins, using simulation for training, the artificial intelligence that's being applied to the processing plants. It's really incredible what's going on here. And along with the technologies that are being developed, it's the entrepreneurs which are being developed, and it's also the collaboration between METs and miners, which are really making us a world-class mining industry.
So, Christine, why would people be setting up in Australia their international development programs? I'm going to be flattering. Is it just because we've got an amazing peak body representative like yourself, or are there other advantages?
Of course, I'm going to say yes to that. But we have a large domestic mining industry. We are the world leaders in mining. And you're going to come to the place where you have opportunities and where you can do business. And that is why we've had such tremendous investment here in Australia in the mining technology space. So out of the top 100 largest METS firms, 75% are located here in Australia, and 33% of those are Australian homegrown. So it just goes to show you that not only have we had investment in mining itself, but we've had investment in the technology around the mining, and that's because there's opportunity here, and there's money to be made, and there's businesses to be grown.
Okay. James, from the Minerals Council, all of this exciting innovation, all these new inventions, but do we have the skill base to actually run these kinds of technologies in mines? Is skill shortages an issue for mining as well?
Yes, it does become an issue from time to time, particularly the number of people studying STEM subjects we'd like to see more of. Mining engineers can often be in short supply, and even just being in the regions, like a lot of regional industries, we do face challenges for trades roles from time to time. So it'd be great to have more young people interested in mining and interested in studying STEM subjects that are often a pathway into mining. Often we found in MCA research that perceptions are driven by the media, and often it's the biggest influence on young people in deciding what to study in school and university are parents and teachers and others. And so if there's a perception that there's no future in mining and that it's an old industry and it's old economy, which is completely false, then often students won't be interested or think about a career in mining. So we've got to change that perception. This is a modern, innovative industry. It's totally different to the way it was back in the gold rush days. And it's a future industry, a growth industry. We'll need more and more minerals across the board for everything we use in life every single day in modern technologies. So we'd love to see young people more interested. And I think in the regions, one thing we're working on that we're very excited about is with Victorian Skills Commissioner and pathway courses to be delivered locally in regional communities to give people the basic skills they need for a pathway into mining. And Monash University and Federation University offer geology, environmental science, and mining engineering courses still. And you can study environmental science actually in Bendigo too.
Okay, and to the two people actually employed in mining itself, do you find that people come directly into mining, or sometimes is it like an electronic engineer sidestepping into mining rather than thinking that was my career choice in the first place? Sue?
So I'd say for me personally, it was sideways. So I'm actually originally trained as a pharmaceutical engineer, of all things. And then if people ask me the question as to how did I end up in mining, it was a little bit by accident. And I think what I appreciate now is being able to sort of promote the fact that the reason why I'm here by accident is because I just didn't know about the opportunities in the first place. So, by default, I ended up in the mining industry, and now I actually recognise the full potential of the types of roles that you can have in mining. There's everything from security officers to paramedics to your engineers. There's your apprentice as well. So I think it would be nice to be able to promote it and people have it as a career choice of preference with all the different types of jobs that are on offer. But I also appreciate, that sometimes you bring in a different viewpoint and different skills if you actually come in from a different industry. And it's not out of the question that you can swap between industries as well. So often that brings in a lot of fresh ideas and opinions into the workspace as well. And that can only be a good thing for being able to move forward and improve the way that we actually view our own industry. And you're not behaving like a silo. You're actually taking in ideas from much broader fields as well. I think it comes down to if you can see it, you can be it kind of philosophy.
So as a pharmaceutical engineer working with bacteria to extract gold in a mine, talk about a multidisciplinary approach. So is there anything you brought from the pharmaceutical background into your current role? Not really?
No, not really. Maybe the power of logical thinking. There's probably thought processes that are very similar with that, but absolutely in terms of what I learned. I suppose there is the biological input. So yes, I did learn with biochemistry and that sort of thing, but that is not your typical mining, pro forma, and you don't put that sort of like on your resume typically when you're entering into the mining industry. So that is different and that is unique. So there are aspects of that which if I reflect on, definitely did contribute.
So I know there are absolutely mining-specific courses, but to the whole panel, the one take-home message that I'm getting here is that mining isn't just about individual mining skills. It's actually about good problem solvers. That's what you are, above and beyond everything else. Is that kind of really what mining is? Why don't you talk about that, Ryan, and then we can talk about your pathway into where you are now as a mine manager.
Yeah, I can take that. I think that's pretty sort of correct statement for the technical roles in mining. I can go through my pathway now. I come in a little bit sideways as well. Bachelor of Applied Science I started out as a surveyor, actually, land surveyor. I went into mining surveying, done engineering, and then undertook some business courses. It's taken me internationally. I've worked overseas, so there's a lot of opportunities within the industry. On the, as it's sort of, I'd say it's a lot of diverse thinking, questioning the norm. Sort of basically that's what an engineer is. They try and find better ways to do things. In terms of operators, it's a little bit different. We get a lot of operators that we obviously train our people. They come in very green. So actually a lot of them are actually from trades backgrounds, plumbers, electricians, concreters. They come to become operators. They like the rosters, 7 days on, 7 days off, or even longer rosters. And on their days off, they'll revert back to their trade and do a couple of days' work of that trade around town. So we get a lot of those sort of people in as operators, train them up in the mining side of things, and then they go back to their other job on their week off.
Okay, interesting indeed. And so, Christine or James, are either of you trained as miners in the first instance, or did you fall into your roles sort of sideways as well? James?
Yes, I didn't come from a mining or a STEM background, despite saying everyone should study STEM. So, but it's a great industry to end up in, and it's so much bigger and broader than I ever even imagined when I ended up working in mining policy. I think one of a great story that I heard too was a geologist in Fosterville, actually, who loved science, went to university to study science, and was going to major in biology, but in first year got exposed to various different types of science, including geology. Loved geology, had never come across it before, and specialised and went on to be a geologist. So just exposing people in school and university to earth sciences, I think, and the mining industry, people are generally open-minded and really interested in it. And there are so many different roles and pathways and jobs in mining. It's much broader than people think. I guess that would be the key message, everything from trades to a mining engineer and everything in between.
For sure. And Christine, your pathway to get where you are as a peak representative of the METS industries?
I guess I don't have a STEM background either, but I remember when I was moving to Australia, I've been here since 1993, thinking, geez, what am I going to do there? Who's going to employ me? And I remember thinking, maybe I'll work in the mining industry. Australia's good at mining. And then maybe I'll make a lot of money. That would be good, because I hear miners make a lot of money down here. Well, I do work in the mining industry, but I work for a not-for-profit. So making a lot of money doesn't go hand in hand with mining. But my background is really in industry development and international trade. And the international trade aspect and what the MET sector is doing internationally then really corresponded with my background. And that's how I got involved. I've also worked across many different industries. And as you know, we talked about, the MET sector is very diverse. So that also fits into my background.
Fantastic. Thank you. So, all right then, what we need very soon is what I'd really like to talk about, and maybe Ryan, you can talk to this. Rod has put in the question about automation. Is that innovation in automation shifting the workforce from the more labour-intensive aspect of mining to more advanced tech opportunities? So I guess that's two questions. One is, do you need less people to operate a mine now than you did before? But are they far more sophisticated workers than perhaps when they were wielding a pick and a shovel?
I would say that you sort of answered the question before. The new generation that are coming through, they're all technically minded, aren't they? Everyone's growing up with iPhones and smart devices, so everyone already knows how to operate those sort of things. So it's more working with the vets to produce the equipment correctly, and then training operators how to use it, just like you turn on a gaming console for the first time. So yeah, I think that's...
All right, so as you say, if I'm a parent worried my child is playing too much Minecraft, maybe a few good questions and comments and leaving a few mining books around could actually create a new career for them. All right, sounds like a good plan here. So can I talk to you about women in STEM and women in mining? This morning, the manufacturing conversation came around to saying that it feels like, for some reason, around 50% of the potential workforce isn't as enthusiastic about manufacturing as they could be. Do you find the same thing about mining?
I think it comes back to what I mentioned before. There's probably not that awareness of really what is entailed in mining. Like, the activities. There is that mental, especially in our region, and because of our history, there is that mental picture that people have that, as Ryan mentioned, it's sort of like you pick and shovel days. And of course, that's furthest from the truth. There's a lot of tech that we actually employ in our processes. I think it's just that perception, it's the awareness and the understanding. And let's face it, really, from the history of mining doesn't have a particularly good rap. So it's very important for us to be able to have these open conversations about the opportunities that are here, the improvements that we're making. Because when you look at our workforce, especially here in the Bendigo region, and Ryan will see the same, we're drive-in, drive-out employees. So just like the local shop owner, we are members of this community as well. And so there's pride in our own community, as well as being able to have pride in the industry that we're actually in. And to have the partnership there is very important. But it also enables us to be able to increase that awareness of the opportunities that exist in mining. So once again, we've all alluded to it, is that perception, excuse me, of where mining, how people view mining, and what is the real work that is being undertaken, the technologies, the partnerships we have with people. Where is our future taking us? So a good example for us is water management. So I would consider Fosterville to be a very water-wise company. Because of our bacterial oxidation process, we have to be very aware of the quality of the water, and we are essentially a reduce, reuse, recycle. So we're a non-discharge site. And I think being able to make people more aware of those kind of things demonstrates to people there's a responsibility in mining, and therefore, as you demonstrate that higher responsibility in your own personal social governance, it becomes a more attractive industry for people to want to work in.
Absolutely.
And it is a great industry to work in.
Yeah. Well, obviously, you could still be in pharmaceuticals, couldn't you?
I could be, and I don't think I'd be enjoying it quite as much.
Oh, that's a great plug. Thank you so much, Sue. That actually, though, about being a good corporate citizen is a good way to segue to a question about continuing Bendigo's new gold rush, and that is, once the mining is completed, rehabilitation is seen as such a sore thumb. On one hand, you can smile and say some old mine sites are tourist attractions, but as a whole, James, perhaps it's a policy question, so I should ask you, do you think that we've got the right balance between encouraging and supporting extraction industries and ensuring that they're good environmental citizens?
Yeah, the regulation on rehabilitation and environmental management is appropriately really high, and companies need to do that well. And some of actually the innovation and great work is in rehab. In Victoria, most of the all of the gold mines currently are actually all underground mines, so the impact on land is fairly minimal. But you can't get a mine approved in Victoria unless you have, right from the start, a very clear closure plan and rehabilitation plan. All the mines do incredible work around replanting of native vegetation and trees and managing environmental issues. Obviously, you can't let sludge or anything like that just flow into rivers like in the gold rush times. Now it's all tailings dams and extremely well managed. So a big part of the innovation and day-to-day work of mines is around that management, and the regulation is appropriately really, really strict. So yes, very, very good question.
So in some ways, you could almost argue that given that it's the end of the mine life, we're talking about perhaps even adopting innovations or inventions to help with rehabilitation that haven't been developed yet.
Yeah, there absolutely can be. Depending on what the community and others want what the site to look like and be used for at the end. There are some examples, particularly interstate, where you would never know a huge open pit mine was even there. The rehabilitation work, it returns to fields and is top quality. So some of that's actually quite amazing, that work.
Excellent. And there's a question here, and I'm not sure how or who to address it to, but Russell asks, parts of our region may be left behind in all of this excitement. So how can this be opportunities? And some of the opportunities for young people in that space, can our universities create some courses specific to our specific mining industries. And I don't know whether Sue or Ryan, you've actually had those conversations about getting local skills for local people to become locally employed.
Yeah, I think it's a very important aspect of the local community. We're very lucky, actually, and a good example is we have a young female operator who works for us, who is actually studying at the same time to be a chemical engineer with aspirations to be a metallurgist. And that is a really good local story, because she is actually, born and bred in Bendigo, and nice to be able to see that progression from where we are, move through into the universities. I think one of the things that I would like to actually see is to the move away from more traditional university degrees, essentially looking more at micro degrees. So obviously we're a fast-moving industry, and to be able to wait 4 or 5 years for somebody to go through and actually do a university degree, sometimes that doesn't feel quite practical, because technology is moving even quicker. And so to be able to actually keep the ongoing training of people in the industry, as well as attracting others to come into the industry, I think is also an important aspect to ongoing education for the resource sector.
Interesting indeed. And with that fast change, you can say, I studied or I learnt on this really important piece of equipment. You say, don't use it anymore. It's we're so agile and fast-paced that what you learnt actually isn't what we do anymore. And Ryan, how about you from where you sit? Is there the opportunity for us to gear up, if you like, our local education institutions to get people enthused for and skilled to come and work in the mines?
I think so, and it's sort of that's in development. One thing, we've got a number of, probably a handful of apprentices. So sort of like what Sue touched on, we're training some people that way. The people with the technical backgrounds, like Melbourne and Ballarat, offer sufficient courses in that area in mining. Bendigo doesn't have anything specific, but still within arm's reach. Like Melbourne's not far away, Ballarat. There's opportunities there for people, and I sort of agree with Sue that, like, a lot of your learning's actually on the ground. University, you learn in the background information behind things and how things work, but when you get there, you learn a lot more, a lot quicker, actually, whilst at work. So there's some merit behind that thought.
Fantastic. And maybe, Christine, I could come to you about that idea of skills shortages, given that METS is as much about both engineering, manufacturing. In fact, it's such a cross-section, we can say it's a multidisciplinary field. Are skills shortages a challenge for the companies that you represent?
Yes, they sure are. And we're working on a number of programs to let students know about the opportunities in the METS sector and what a METS career looks like. I think, as Sue alluded to, a lot of people don't know what a career looks like in METS or mining, and we need to tell them. We run an internship program where we place students studying STEM into our METS companies, and we've received over 400 applications this year for those internships. So you can't tell me there's not interest out there. There really is a lot of interest. The other thing I think we need to look at, and this is certainly being worked on, and the MCA is working on this, is the vocational education and training that we provide. And often I think about, what is the fitter and turner in the digital age? What is the welder in the digital age? What are they called? And are we skilling those people who were doing fitting and turning certificates to being that data scientist, to being the data analytics and using computers more? And so I think we really need to turn our minds to that.
Okay. And very quickly, because we're so close to being out of time, I think that you also wanted to talk about that METS Centre of Excellence that you've been trying to create.
The Victorian METS Export Hub.
Yeah.
Correct. Yes. Well, a good plug for that. So we've just launched our Victorian METS Export Hub. And to the question before about some regions some people or regions being left behind, linking into networks and programs can really help people build the skills and capabilities they need, so they make sure they're not left behind. And so if anyone's interested, they can look at our website, osmine.com.au, to find out more.
Fantastic. And with that, I think we're well and truly out of time. To our panellists and to Christine Gibbs-Stewart from Ostmine, thank you. James Sorahan from the Minerals Council of Australia, thank you very much. And to our mining representatives from Mandalay Resources, Ryan Osterbury, and Fosterville Gold Mines, Sue Mills, thank you so much for spending time with us today. And of course, thank you for joining us for the 2020 Bendigo Invention and Innovation Festival. So the session, you've been part of Bendigo's new gold rush, and hopefully it is an inspiring look at a bright future of gold and other minerals in our region. Thanks once again to our session partner Mandalay Resources and contributors Ostmine, the Minerals Council of Australia, Victorian Division and Fosterville Gold Mine. And if you'd like to find out more about the METS sector, the BIIF welcomes Christine Gibbs-Stewart back on September the 8th to talk about the highly innovative sector and what makes Australia a global leader. She also will be introducing more about the programs to assist regional Victorian METS organisations to take on the world. And you may also be interested in our Showcasing Innovation in Greater Bendigo series. It's a 3-part series starting on September the 15th that aims to highlight a number of businesses within the region, including mining expert Peter McCarthy talking a bit about Fosterville Mine's story. And you can add more free sessions through the 2020 BIIF app through your browser or your mobile device. Further details can be found at biif.com.au. And if you learnt something today, don't forget, share it on social media. And when you do, use the hashtag 2020BIIF 2020 BIIF. We hope you've enjoyed this session. Thank you and goodbye.